Welcome to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spirit. Today our guest, Dr. Charles Moser from Texas, Houston, Texas. He is at bluehorsepersonaldevelopment.com. Fantastic time, great conversation. Our topic is going to be identifying blind spots on your way to a fee-for-service culture. And he's going to get into some really heavy or deep conversation about identifying those things, naming them, creating a little distance. Great conversation. Along the way, a bunch of other pearls, because he owned 3 offices all by himself. Then he had a hand injury and tremors and had to stop practicing. So talk about hitting the depth of your profession and then bouncing back. And he worked for DSO for 8 years, and then the DEO group, which is an enterprise building organization, and now has his own company. So I think you're really going to enjoy the episode. I think dentists from all walks are going to pick up something from it. If you like the podcast, click like, subscribe, share it with your friends. That's how we grow. You want to leave a review, we always appreciate those, just like our private practices. If you don't like it, well, I'd like to hear from you. So please reach out to me, sonnyspira@gmail.com or 607-624-2962. Hit me up. As always, our Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast is sponsored and brought to you by Kettenbach Dental. They have a new product, Visalis Fill and Visalis Flow. They are a light-cured nano-hybrid composite. Highly filled at over 80%. High polishability, aesthetic, and durability with tremendous strength. Makes it an ideal composite for anterior and posterior restorative needs. Easy and quick shade guide system called the Flex system with Vita and a bleach and an opaque shade. Remember, your costs are lower at Kettenbach. It's available direct to you with no middleman costs. To learn more or to order, simply contact your local Kettenbach rep. 877-532-2123. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show, everybody.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet, our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns, and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast, and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spirit. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Charles Moser or Moser. How do you pronounce it?
It's Moser, yep.
Moser, yeah. See, up north we would put that H in there because we also eat pizza and soda, you know. So Moser. All right.
Have a pop, huh? Yeah.
Interesting background. Let me just give you a brief synopsis. Born and raised Houston, Texas. You're going to see a pattern here. Graduate of University of Texas in Austin. Yep, he's got the Longhorns up if you're watching the video. In 82, didn't get his degree, and then went to dental school. In 86, graduated 80, 90, and guess where? UT, but this time San Antonio. He's moving around Texas. Owned and has owned 3 dental offices by himself and had a hand injury that stopped all that. So we're going to hit on that and how that happened and how he pivoted. He's learned how to pivot and continue to rechannel his efforts into dentistry and leadership. And he was a dental director for 8 years at a large DSO. Hold your boos, hold your applause. We're going to hear honestly how that went. In the 2000s, and almost 100 locations were there by the time he exited. Worked for a DEO for 5 years. But now he has his own company called bluehorsepersonaldevelopment.com. That's bluehorsepersonaldevelopment.com. He has been a student of leadership and personal growth for the past 16 years, and he teaches leadership skills to teams all up and down the organizational chart. I am. And also, he is also a keynote speaker and loves to help people from chaos to calmness. And our topic today is going to be identifying the blind spots on your way to a fee-for-service culture. So please welcome Dr. Charles. How you doing?
The future of fee-for-service dentistry is based in membership patients. If you need help starting your membership plan, or if your plan is too big for your team to manage, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com to set up your free membership growth solution demo with our team.
I'm doing well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You got it. Looking good too, man. We're on video. I like this. All right. Everybody can see it. I got dressed up. I wore my good Big East sweatshirt. He wears Greg Norman golf. He's chilling in Texas. It's probably 95 degrees there. It's about 60 up here in the upper Northeast. So first of all, tell us about growing up in Houston. What were your folks do? What were they doing?
I had a great childhood. You know, I have absolutely a very boring, loving family. Two parents stayed at home. You know, mom stayed at home. She was a cook and made sweets, you know, for the bar mitzvah parties and all that side of stuff. My dad was a mechanical engineer, vice president of the company. It was a great childhood. We went to Galveston and sailed and fished and had a beach house. And my dad and I built a car together when I was 15. It was just a total leave it to Beaver, man. I guess we're going to need another show.
At 15 though, you built a car. I mean, you had to be like car crazy, right? Oh, my car, my car, meet chick.
Yeah, at 15, my dad and I were in the garage every night building a car. It was a great experience, and you know, like I said, just a wonderful childhood. Two older sisters, you know, great rivalry there.
Oh, you got the same birth order as I do. I got two older sisters. It's good to be the youngest.
The youngest male in the family.
Good to be the youngest male.
It was great. It was great. Yeah. So no sob story there. You know, obviously no regrets there. I guess the biggest regret is my mother sadly passed away prematurely 2 weeks to the day before I found out that I was accepted to dental school, which was her dream. So,
oh my,
you know, there's the tugging on the heartstrings part of the story.
Okay. So since we hit on the dental part, why did you go into dentistry, and or who helped plant the seed? Where did it come from? Where's the genesis?
So when I was 13 years old, my mother just flat out told me, be a dentist. Now, again, you and I are compadres here. But in 1973, when my mother told me that, the reason she told me, she said, it's a great job. You get to take a vacation whenever you want. You just walk up to your book and X out the days that you don't want to be there. You take Wednesdays off to play golf, and there's no such thing as an emergency. And again, in 1973, that was an accurate description of dentistry. And so from that point on, my sights were set.
Wow. So you never questioned it, never wavered, like you never got with your buddies and you're like, hey man,
no,
why don't you go in engineering, and why don't you race cars? You know, nothing.
Nothing. No, it was tunnel vision, you know, until Now, again, I did hit a little blip. I did go to the University of Texas. I didn't graduate from the University of Texas because they asked me to leave before I was finished. So I did have to take a little hiatus from college, and then ultimately went back to college and still did not get my degree, but the second time being a little bit easier, and then got accepted to dental school in a time where you couldn't do that nowadays. I mean, dental school applications were down. I was very fortunate. I was able to parlay the situation into getting accepted to all three dental schools here, yes, in the state of Texas. We're so big, we have 3 dental schools. Actually, 4 now.
You know what, though? Now the dental schools are popping up all over the place. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to add one special that Medidenta is running for the month of November, and they want everybody to take advantage of it. Turn in any old, crappy, broken down handpiece and get 50% off a brand new handpiece. Yes, that's right, 50% off any handpiece. Just turn in an old, broken down one or find some parts and send it to them. Thanks. Yeah. They really are. New York State used to have SUNY Buffalo, SUNY Stony Brook, right, and Columbia. They now have Columbia, Stony Brook, Truro, Buffalo, I think I'm missing one other one.
In the NYU?
NYU. Thank you. I'm missing NYU. So we had NYU, Columbia, and Stony Brook in the city area, and then we had Buffalo upstate. Now there's Truro, and they're talk of putting another one in Buffalo, and a different person is pretty much behind it. It's amazing to me how people can afford to build dental schools with just the capital costs involved, let alone the cost of instructors and everything else. But pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Now, did your sisters, were they in any of these fields? Were they any healthcare, any background, any relatives in healthcare?
No. All of my dad's
very similar to me.
brothers, all of my dad's brothers were engineers, because that was the job to have in the 50s, right? And the 60s. That was like being a doctor. So all of my uncles, mother's side as well, lots of engineers. My sister's oldest one got married, became a housewife, wonderful person. My middle sister went on to design clothing and have a clothing store. Ultimately took over the baking business for my mother. Extremely creative. Just love them both. They're just, I can't say enough great things about my family.
So wait, your mom had a baking business?
She did, out of the house.
But so this is cool, because if you think about it as a dentist, right, you got the entrepreneur part from mom. Our show is sponsored by our good friends at Medidenta. Medidenta has served the dental community since the 1940s with award-winning innovation and a large catalog of dental products in most facets of dentistry. I personally use several of their products and recommend them to anyone I can. They are a sponsor of the program and are offering 30% off. That's right, 30% off anything site-wide at Medidenta.com. Simply use the code FFSD30 at checkout and get your 30% instant savings. From CR-rated prophy angles, hygiene, high-speed handpieces, burr, endo, whitening, they more than have you covered. Their customer service is amazing, and they are willing to walk you through an order at any time. So if you have any questions, give them a call at 800-221-0750. That number, 800-221-0750. Or send them an email at orders@medidenta.com and mention the Fee-for-Service Dentistry Group and get your discounts. You got the kind of the mechanical genes a little bit from dad, so you're engineering. So you should have some capacity. Was there ever any talk around the dinner table about running a small business or anything like that?
No, but I mean, I did. The only other path that entered my mind was being a chef, because I did like standing next to my mother and watching her bake. It was very creative. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, at least people really like the person that bakes the brownies, right? Unlike the
absolutely.
dentist.
They get invited to the next party. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. A little bit different, but, I guess I can, I'll say it humbly and vulnerably and a little embarrassingly. I wanted initials after my name.
Uh-huh. Fair enough.
And I will tell you that, my dentist growing up as a kid, William Clitheroe, he's not with us anymore, was an amazing guy. I loved Dr. Clitheroe. I didn't like going to the dentist.
Yeah.
But Bill Clitheroe, I was not afraid of him. And quick story, I saw him at a dental meeting, probably 5 years before he passed, and I had to have one of the alloys replaced that he put in my mouth in 1968. And I told him, I went up to him, I said, it only lasted 45 years. I want my money back. So he reached into his pocket and gave me $8. He said, here's your $8 for the filling. That only lasted 45 years, so.
Right.
Good guy.
It's interesting. And so the dentistry part, I lost my train of thought for a second. Okay. So the dentistry part, it's fascinating. There's that influx. And there's always seems to be, when I interview people, there's always seems to be a dentist somewhere that had that positive impact, on something, so
no.
I don't think you can affect that.
I had a family friend whose father was a dentist that I worked for him when I was in high school as part of a a high school program that they had available. So I did 3 months in his office where we played with mercury in the palm of our hands because we
Yep.
mixed our own alloy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had the two wells. You had the wet well and then you had the powder well. Yeah.
Yep. And
we're dating ourselves here, man.
Oh, big time. I mean, why would anybody? Well, I mean, I know who's listening now. Everybody under the age of 40 just hung up,
Yeah,
but,
right. Click. Next thing.
Don't hang up. Don't hang up. There's good stuff coming.
So tell me now, you graduate, what's your next step in your career path?
Yeah, so dental school was great. University of Texas Health Science Center, amazing dental school, was voted #1 in the country by deans and admission staff when I graduated. So I got an amazing education, went on to Hartford, Connecticut to another great program at St. Francis Hospital where I did my residency program. And then, like a magnet back to Texas where both my wife and I were from. And, off to save the world, basically. No case too big or too small, no patient I couldn't handle. That quickly changed, clearly, as we all know. But really excited to get back into it and had some great mentors, which, again, if you're a young dentist out there, please do not underestimate. And you and I were talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
about the ability and the influence that a great mentor will have on your professional life. So really set me up for success right off the bat. Bought my first practice in 1994 in the middle of downtown Houston on the 10th floor of a beautiful old building with Italian marble in it. It was a great office.
You bought your first practice when? What year?
1994.
What'd you do from 90 to 94?
So I was an associate with some of my mentors,
sure.
right?
Gotcha.
And then I was also part-time working in, the clinic, in a fast food clinic type of thing. Get your speed up. And all of my mentors were Pankey doctors and Dawson occlusion. And just, I mounted models for them and I cut and pinned their dies. And, not to really date ourselves, but Sonny, I think it is important that, let's say you were an associate today, what would you be doing? You would be milling crowns for your doctor. You would be designing crowns on a CAD CAM system. Essentially the same thing. Point being is stay next to someone who has the same training but more experience than you that can really shortcut some of the challenges that are out there.
But you listen to those docs, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
The real value comes into how do you handle its scenario. Like just my son the other day, just yesterday, was talking about a challenging day he had, and he was talking about one patient, and then he went on to the next one, and he was like, "Oh my God, I had nothing but trouble patients that day," and it was one scenario after another, and I was talking to him about implants, and he was like, "I really need to just sit down and listen to you sell an implant case." And I was like, never really thought of that, but I get it, and the question, right? If a person has an objection or has a question, how do you frame the conversation that is proper to that person, right? How do you direct it to that person so they can absorb it, number one, and then answer maybe objections or questions, but at least understand the benefit to them and how it's of value to them, create value. Right. That's, I think, what we always want to do. So,
well, let's go back a little further even in that process. And that is so we're selling a service that people don't want to buy.
Yeah.
That if we were selling LASIK surgery, no problemo, right? If we were selling Botox and cosmetic surgery, no problemo. But we're selling a service that really most people don't want to buy. And so it does take a certain amount of extrovertedness, if you will, to be able to talk to people. And I got that from my parents. It's very easy for me to talk to people. But like I was about to say, or I'm going to say now, is I think that the people listening here, if you're having trouble selling, and I don't mind that word at all, because we're selling things that people need, don't sell things that are unethical or immoral. But if you're having trouble converting cases from treatment planning to treatment planned, then you need to ask yourself, am I an extrovert, or am I just having trouble talking to people? Have that self-awareness first to figure out where is the root of the problem. Because maybe you are the extrovert and you're just talking about the wrong stuff. Because you're not going to sell a case by talking about your vacation, even if they went to the same spot you did. You're going to create a relationship with that person, but you're not going to sell the case.
Right.
So you need to find out if your problem is the fact that you don't like to talk to people, or you're talking about the wrong things. And then you can get to the gap is people tend to buy what they want, not what they need, right? Mm-hmm. And so the gap that we have to bridge is the conversion to get them to recognize that what they need is actually what they want. And when you can bridge that gap based on asking them great questions about what do you value about your teeth, and then taking your treatment plan back to that answer of what they value about their teeth. I want to keep them. I like to smile. I like to eat. Everything I designed here, sir, was designed to meet that answer to that question of what's important to you. Mm-hmm. Now we bridge that gap between really what they need and what they want. And then it's just a matter of kind of closing the deal, which can be as simple as, sounds like we're ready to go. Mm-hmm. Right. And they go, well, yeah, okay. How much? I'll let Cindy or Joe or whomever talk about that. I don't talk money. In a fee for service practice, I'm guessing you probably didn't either.
No, I don't have a problem with it. Like, if ultimately I'll have the assistant do the full presentation, but I'll say to a patient, like, we're talking about, let's just take a simple tooth missing. Okay, we can do an implant here, and the cost, you got the implant, the abutment, and the crown that goes over the top of it. We're looking in the neighborhood of $5,000. Now it should be 48, 49, so I should be a little bit higher. And I'll hit that and I'll say, but I'll give it to you specifically by this. Now, if we want to have a tooth where you're wearing, we're going to make a flipper, add another $1,000. If we're going to do this as a bridge, it's about $4,000, and it's 3,900, So I want to give them some generalized numbers. So, if you want, this is an implant, we're going to do 4 with something that fixed, it doesn't come out. Okay, you're going to add about 15 grand for that portion and about 8 for this. So that adds up. And I think the one mistake that I used to make, just a very simple root canal, build up, and crown. When a person asked me how much, I focused on what was the cost of the root canal. Well, that wasn't what it cost to save the tooth. What it cost to save the tooth was the root canal, build up, and crown. Present the whole fee right off the bat. Because if you give them the part and they're thinking, I can afford let's say it's $1,000, I can afford the $1,000. And then you're hitting them, it's another 400 and another 1,000. Well, wait a second, I thought it was $1,000 to save the tooth. Well, it is. I don't have a tooth there, right? So that helped me early on, and I try to definitely pass that on to our docs when they start listening, talk in terms of the case fees. But I don't back up or shy away from it. I said I don't know the very specifics, and I truly don't. I don't have the exact numbers, but I have enough, and I always round up so that when I can give an estimate, I can do some math in my head and say, yeah, that's going to be around this.
Yeah, again, I think we have to ask ourselves too. We have to put ourselves in the position of a consumer. When I go to buy something and I ask them how much it costs, they say, it's between $1,000 and $1,500. I heard the 1,000. Right. I didn't hear the 1,500. So, be careful about those ranges out there. I mean, and I know that sounds really obvious, but
right. That's why I give them one number, and I know the ultimate number is going to be a little less. Like, I don't know about you, but every time I saw my accountant, he would say, hey, come in to see me. It's November. Let's got to do some year-end planning. Oh, geez, you had a good year. Looks like your taxes are going to be $100,000. And I'm like, oh, okay, damn. And then, April comes around. Hey, I got great news. You owe $99,400. And you're like, happy.
What a genius. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always, I'm like, well, why don't I use that same concept, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I kind of learned. So it's just that, but I think more importantly, what the person's looking at is what you do, like all those nonverbals. Like if you're like, oh, well, and you start hesitating, they're already thinking, well, his fees are too high. Listen to him. He's not comfortable with his fees.
I agree with that.
Right. So that's,
I think that's a big problem in dentistry, don't you? I mean, Yeah, for some reason we as an industry, we don't like to tell people how much we charge.
Yeah, we're like, I mean, listen, it's cost what it costs. Dentistry is not cheap, and good
No.
dentistry is really not cheap.
I'll ask this question to anybody watching this. When was the last time you bought a car? And think about when you bought a car, and a year later, you got an email from your salesman or salesperson that said, "Hey, the next version is out of the car that you just bought 12 months ago. You got to come in and test drive it." And you're like, wait a minute. I mean, how much different can the car be 12 months later? But they're already trying to put you in a new car. Now, I'm not suggesting that we respond in turn the same way, but we're talking, like I said, I wanted my money back from the filling that was put in 45 years ago. I was told it was going to last a lifetime, or at least that's what I understood. And that's just not the way it is. So, yeah, I hope that the next generation of dentists can be a little bit prouder when they're talking about, what they're doing and the value behind it. Because as I used to tell my patients, what I put in your mouth will last longer than anything you're driving or anything that you're wearing. And if that's not a good value, I don't know what is.
That's a good point. I never heard anybody say that. That's a pearl
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
So I would say, well, first of all, I did a lot of gold work, a lot of gold onlays and things like that, which just kind of does last forever. But I would tell them, when they would start to hedge at that $5,000 that you mentioned, I would tell them what I'm going to put in your mouth is going to last longer than anything you're driving or anything you're wearing, period.
Unless they have a Carhartt sweatshirt on. Those things are indestructible.
There are a few things, but they might outgrow it.
I'm just joking.
Outgrow it.
My daughter's telling me how those are in style now, by the way.
There are some things.
Gosh.
I got a shirt for my honeymoon. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me now. So you own, in the process, you own 3 different practices. So you had your first practice you bought on your own was downtown Houston.
Yeah. 94.
Then take us from that. What happened?
Yeah.
And what was the model? What was your business model? Were you a fee-for-service practice or were you a mixture?
I was downtown Houston. I mean, there's a lot of insurance in downtown Houston, a lot of PPO. And so we experimented with those things for sure. And then ultimately narrowed it down. We didn't get off completely, but we narrowed it. Like, for instance, I practiced in downtown Houston when Enron was still there. Okay. And Arthur Anderson. So I had hundreds of patients that were on their plans. And, you just have to grapple with it, right? And I decided, I was young still too. I was just 5 years out of dental school. I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather do dentistry at the reduced rate than not do dentistry, because doing dentistry was going to make me a better dentist. And like I said, I didn't even know my fees anyway. I couldn't have told you anyway. So I didn't really want to know who was on a plan or who wasn't on a plan. I just did dentistry. It was all the same. I didn't change labs or anything like that. I just did the best dentistry I could do. So, and I kind of, in 1990 was somewhat when the entrepreneurial spirit really hit dentistry. There were a couple of guys out there that were in the group practice, like the clinic that I was working at. He had 3 pretty large clinics. There was a guy named Jack Castle who, had Castle Dental, which was a big clinic. McGregor was a big one. And so we were working for these guys, and all of my buddies were like, well, we can do this. Why are we giving this guy 70% of the money and we're only getting 30? And so we all kind of developed that entrepreneurial spirit, and it was a little bit of a race to see who could get bigger faster. The downtown office did okay. It was doing pretty well. So I was like, all right, bought a second one in a rural, not a rural area, but a high-end area that was closer to home. And that practice was a great practice. A lot less insurance there because it was much more affluent. And then I did something that wasn't the smartest thing in the world. I veered from my model, and the third practice I bought was a Medicaid practice. And
it's just hard to make money in that. That's all.
Well, it's hard to make McDonald's hamburgers and it's hard to make Burger King hamburgers. But if you've got 3 Burger King stores, you can do well.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't have 2 Burger Kings and 1 McDonald's.
Well, you can't have
Too
the
many
same
systems.
processes, and you can't have the same steps.
Exactly right.
You can't have uniformity. Now you have to have,
Exactly right.
right? Like you said,
So,
you got McDonald's delivery, and then you got Wendy's.
Yeah, different systems, same burger, or it's a burger, but different systems all the way around. And that was a really difficult thing to do. That practice did okay, but not great. And then 2006, bam, that's when kind of life changed pretty quickly for me. I had a 16-foot flatbed trailer hitch fall on my hand and almost amputated my left index finger, and I'm left-handed. And so it looks like that if you have video now. And then I just became, I was a pretty high-end.
You're lucky you didn't lose
guy.
your fingertip.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much almost did. But the hand became useless. I developed a tremor after the injury, and I was doing a lot of veneers and, like I said, onlays and things that were pretty delicate. And I couldn't do that anymore. Tried for a little bit, but then it just became impossible. I had some friends that were growing this large DSO, a Medicaid DSO here in Houston, and they needed some help because they were growing rapidly, and they knew. I mean, it was the trust factor was there, so they said, "Look, come on in, take over Houston and San Antonio." I had 16 locations that I managed with about 45 associates. Great chain of command. Learned a lot from those guys. Owe them an amazing debt of gratitude.
So let me ask you this: when this accident and this happens, and then you learn, okay, I can't do dentistry now, and you have the responsibility of ownership for 3 practices.
Yep.
Probably, let me guess, 40 plus employees, ballpark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Their dinner table is fed directly by you. What was your first inner feeling or inner thought that went through your mind? Oh no, this is what I have.
Yeah. Well, embarrassingly, I didn't think of them. I was trying to figure out how I was going to put food on the table for my 2 children that were young.
Well, yeah, same thing. The responsibilities that you have, right?
Oh, I was whatever negative emotion anybody could type into the chat box, I had it. Anger, fear, frustration, misery, depression.
Probably owed the bank something, right? So
I owed the bank money. Yeah, all of them.
Did you get thoughts. Did you hit depression?
Yeah, definitely. So some bad thoughts crept in, no doubt about it. And there were some dark days for sure.
Yeah. See, that's like this is reality. Like everybody thinks it's rosy. You know what I mean?
No.
Right?
I mean, it's still bad to this day. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that I kind of love doing what I'm doing now from a leadership standpoint, because I do really honestly believe that I'm contributing to people's mental health by giving them the skills that allow them to take a lot of the noise out of their business day-to-day life and let them do the things that they learned to do in dental school that we all just wanted to do. I want to fix teeth. I want to help people.
That's what we're going to. That's what we're getting to. Exactly.
Yeah.
But you've experienced this, and I'm not agreeing that you have to have cancer, but when you experience these tremendous swings in a career where, think about it, you're flying, you're in third practice, you know, and everybody looks at you from the outside and says, what a super successful guy.
Right.
You know, he's got it all, wife, kid, but everything, how, the whole
you bet.
Photo, the
vacations,
the whole picture painting. And then bam, in a blink of an eye. Did you have disability insurance?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I did. But again, if you know anything about disability insurance, it doesn't replace your income, but it is a safety net of sorts. And I would absolutely tell everybody, you should hang up the call right now. And if you don't have disability insurance, I don't know what you're doing on this call, you should have disability insurance.
I'll second that, and I've never had to claim it, but I will second it. I bought a practice from a dentist who had an eye injury. That was when I got into my own practice. He had a retinal problem, and thank God he had pretty good insurance. So
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an all-time low.
Yeah, stood on the ledge for sure. Yeah.
Your recovery then stems from some contacts and relationships that you've had. That's what helped you get into this next phase of your life.
Correct. And
Did you sell?
even looking back on it,
Yeah.
the idea that I wanted to be such a great clinician, again, which I do believe that most dentists feel the same way. We want to do great dentistry, allowed me to segue into that, even though it was a Medicaid practice. The guys that started that practice, their why, if you will, the reason they did that was because we worked in Medicaid practices after we graduated, and we saw how lousy those people were treated. And we wanted to treat those people like real dental patients. And we wanted to make sure that the children that needed all that dentistry didn't fear the dentist. Because, I mean, you can talk about the expense that we have, from people going to the emergency rooms and having their teeth taken out of the emergency room, how that clogs up the system. I don't know that we really did anything for that part of it, but we did what we could to make good dental patients out of Medicaid patients and let them know that, hey, you can come to the dentist and it doesn't have to be terrible. You can get your teeth cleaned. We did a lot of sealants, a lot of preventive. And that was their why. And again, I take my hat off to those guys. They made a lot of money and they earned every penny of it. They were well deserving of it. And then, of course, like I said, they knew me from a clinical standpoint. They could trust that. And then they knew me from a integrous standpoint as well. So
what was your position again? Were you director?
Yeah. So I was a dental director. I reported to the chief dental officer. And so I was the dental director. I was boots on the ground. Let's just call it that way. My day-to-day was essentially I was in an office from opening until lunch, and then I would drive to another office from lunch until closing. So I was in an office pretty much, 90, 85% of the time. I had a little office at corporate. That was fun. That again, strokes your ego when you get to go to corporate type of thing. But my best work was done working with the clinicians, the new graduates, teaching them, how to talk to patients, like we just mentioned, teaching them.
So you're truly coaching. You're the dental.
Oh yeah, no, I was mentoring and coaching every day.
So talk about sharpening your axe.
Yeah. And I still talk to some of those associates. I mean, I still am in contact with some of them to this day. And that job ended in 2017. Yeah.
Now, you then said you work for a DEO. What's the difference between a DEO and a DSO?
Yeah, so it's the put a V in front of it, the DEO, and those initials stand for the Dental Entrepreneurial Organization. So what the DEO is an organization, it's a community where people who want to scale and want to have multiple offices and become a DSO, if you will, they have a community that they can reach out to for help. And then we put on live events and we brought in speakers. Gordon Christensen was a speaker at one of our summits.
Who's the head of that company?
John Coyce. So the CEO of that is a guy named Jake Poole. He's not a dentist. And then Emmett Scott is also an executive and a partner in that organization.
Okay.
Really some fine people. Again, they're doing great, and they're doing a great service to dentistry by creating these communities so that these multiple practice owners aren't getting in over their head. But yeah, so I went through the John Maxwell leadership training program.
You took the words out of my mouth, because I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. I got probably 10 of his books, and I love his writings, and it's so down to earth and so organic in nature. Spiritual.
Yeah. So
but yeah,
I'll give you. Yeah. Let's give some more pearls here. And so I went through Maxwell while I was a dental director at South Texas. I come back from John Maxwell. I'm a certified speaker, trainer, and coach. I've got the little coin and I've got the certificate, and I'm ready to roll. And I'm a believer, and I know that if you don't use something immediately, chances of you using it after 48 hours goes way down. So I'm at a clinic, and one of my associates comes to me and says, Dr. Moser, can you come in and help? The mom's really kind of pissed off. and she wants to see my boss. Okay, sure. So I walked in, I put my hand out, and I said to the lady, my name is Dr. Moser. How can I add value to you today? Now, what do you think her response was, Sonny?
She went, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I said it again. I said, my name is
Excuse
Dr.
me?
Moser. I said, I'm the dental director here. How can I add value to you today? And she paused a little bit again and very frustrated, not knowing what to say. She said, I'm just here to get my kids' teeth cleaned and the filling done, and we want to get out of here. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's exactly what we can do for you today. We will do that for you today. And then I went below the leadership line with sarcasm, and I said, no one wants you out of this office faster than me. I knew exactly what I was doing. But now let's backtrack. How does that conversation usually take place? And again, for anybody that's watching or listening to this is the money part right here. Because when I walked in and said, how do I add value to you today? Other than what typically someone would have said was, what's the problem? Right? Well, when you ask somebody, what's the problem? You're not only going to get the problem of the day, you're going to get the problem of the month. You're going to get the story about the dry cleaners and everything else, right? So by asking her,
it also
go ahead.
It also puts someone on their heels too. What's the problem? Versus how can I help you? How may I be of assistance? Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. How can I add value to you? That's because that's what I want to do for people. And it totally reframed the entire conversation immediately because it just took her off guard. I don't want to say it put her on the defensive because I don't want to be on the offensive.
Right.
I just don't want to be in the middle of this argument, this screaming match about her waiting 45 minutes, but yet she was 25 minutes late, so she's lucky to be seen at all. There was no reason to get in that tit for tat type of
that's
situation.
A lose-lose situation. Yeah.
So totally defused it by saying, how do I add value to you today? And, I said, if the goal here is to get your child's teeth cleaned and do the filling, then what do you say we get on that right now? It's like, well, that's all I want. And so we did it. And that was my way of approaching almost every patient from that point on. I walked in and got very comfortable saying, my name's Dr. Moser. How am I going to be able to add value to you today? And again, they would look at me like, what? But they couldn't give me a yes or no or a fine and silent. I used to call it the fine and silent, right? Hey, Sonny, how you doing? Fine and silent. That's not a conversation, So you walk in and say, hey, how am I going to be able to add value to you today? Like, I don't know. How do you think you're going to be able to add value to me? What a great comeback, right? If you're a dentist and your patient looks at you and says, well, I don't know. How do you think you're going to be able to add value to me today? Oh boy, did they just tee it up for you? I mean, that is the case is sold from there. So
when you went that sarcasm, you said specifically, what was that? What's that step?
I said, well, so there's above the line and below the line leadership. It's totally binary. There is no middle ground. Above the line leadership is empathetic and compassionate, and below the line leadership is not. And so I said to her, no one wants you out of this office faster than me. And that's sarcasm. That was nasty. But I knew what I was doing from a standpoint of emotional intelligence. I chose to go there. She, luckily, I didn't really pick up on it. She was still fuming anyway. But and so that's just like I said, that's a little self-awareness, emotional intelligence, understanding that when you're going to go below the line, at least understand that it's your choice to do that. And you don't have to do that. So that's just accountability and those types of traits. But so the DEO, I became an executive business coach where I worked with CEOs of DSOs. I worked with chief dental officers. I worked with office managers. Anybody that wanted to go on a growth path, anybody wanted to explore what it looked like to get out of the shame and blame business, to get out of the right and wrong business. There's really no right and wrong. There just is. Emmett Scott, one of the most amazing things he says is it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. Look, isn't that what we're all trying to do? Even if you go home and you got it right and you had this massive argument, you're still below the line, right? So get above the line and just let's have a little empathy and compassion. Understand that we don't know what people's stories are, you know. So just get it right. It doesn't matter about being right. My wife is exactly the opposite of me, and we've been married for 36 years. She'll say, I don't drive anymore. I haven't driven a car with her in it in probably 30 years because I don't go the way she would go. And she'll say, well, go this way. I go, why? And she said, it's faster. I go, well, who said I wanted to get there is faster? Maybe I want to take the scenic route, or maybe I want to take the route that has a new street. I don't care. I don't care. And I really don't. And I really don't care about being right or wrong. I care about getting it right. I care about people going home and being in a state of mind where they can enjoy their family or enjoy their hobbies or enjoy whatever it is they're doing, rather than thinking about the argument that they had with their associate, with their office manager, with their patient, with their vendor, or whatever it is. Don't do that. Don't do it.
All right. Well, this is good. Some good stuff. Let's get into the identifying of the blind spots on your way to a fee-for-service culture. What are some of those blind spots that people need to be on the lookout for?
Well, I think the blind spots are going to show up in how they're affecting you, right? So you went through the process, right? You had a practice that you took to a fee-for-service practice. Is that accurate?
No. I started the practice I bought I'll call it was a fee-for-service practice. Now, okay. I did find a couple people where he accepted insurance and wrote off the difference, and I was like, this isn't. Okay. And then my understanding was that's not legal or ethical. So if I'm not collecting the fee, I have to. I didn't know I have to notify the insurance company, but all I know is if the insurance company checked and they said, "Where's this other money?" and you didn't collect it, you presented a fraudulent claim, and
That's correct.
You were guilty of a federal offense. So I was like, okay, I've got two young kids. One just had a major heart problem when she was born, and we just bought this practice, and everything I own is in this car right now. No, we're not doing that. So We've been fee for service from the get-go. So I didn't have to go through the conversion. The multitude of people that I've interviewed on this show, a lot of them have shared their journeys. So I have a pretty good feel for what they went through. So I can't speak for them, but I can sort of speak a little bit of what they've been through. So
I would suggest just that people really need to work on enhancing and heightening their sense of awareness. What are they feeling? Is it anxiety? Is it fear because they're going to make less money if they get off of these insurance plans? Is it ego, or are they thinking that people are going to think they're better than, or we're better than you because we don't take your insurance? What is it that you're feeling? And
this is what are they feeling about moving in that direction? Correct.
Okay. Correct.
Gotcha.
Because that's kind of the first start. I was like, well, we're thinking about getting off all these insurance plans. Okay, well let's talk about that. What's that going to look like to you? What's that going to feel like to you? Let's pretend like you've already done it. Now, who are you? And
that's like a start with the end in mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Covey, right?
Yeah. Good stuff. Yep.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah. And so then if you can, from a psychology standpoint, there's this idea of, well, if you can label that feeling, fear, anxiety, ego, whatever it is, then you take it off of your back and you put it alongside of you. And there's distance between you and that feeling now. And it gets a little bit easier to unpack.
Give me an example of that, what you're just talking about there.
So for instance,
what would one of those feelings be?
Yeah. So in my own journey of having my hand crushed on a daily basis, sometimes hourly, I would just start sweating. I would just, start hyperventilating. And I'm like, why? What's happening to me here? Right.
So this is anxiety then. You'd call this anxiety.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I'm having a panic attack.
So that's the feelings. Person's feeling.
That's the feeling.
Right.
So the feeling is the feeling, right? It's that visceral feeling of sweating and vibrating and heating up, pulse racing. Well, now I have to take that feeling and I have to label it. okay, Charles, you're having an anxiety attack. Okay. Now, once I do that, I can put space between me and that anxiety attack because now it's a thing. It's not me. It's separate from me, right?
Because it has a name, it has an identity.
It has a name, right? Okay. Well, the first thing I used to tell myself was, I've had these before, and they always pass. That was almost enough right there to just allow myself to go, okay, well, here it comes, and I know it always passes. Sometimes a little longer than others. By the way, I mean, the reason I ended up leaving dentistry is because I developed a tremor in my hand. And I would walk into the operatory not knowing if my hand was going to shake or not. And when it did, and there's a patient in the chair waiting for you to do 2 crowns, what do?
Yeah, they don't want to see someone coming at them with a hand.
Oh my God, no!
Like oscillating,
no,
like an oscillator.
So I would excuse myself. My entire team was so supportive. I would excuse myself, go to the lab, make an excuse, type of thing, and then go through my process of it always passes. I believe this is so weird, but I did have a specific song that I would listen to. I'm not going to tell you what it was because it's so corny. But I had a specific song, and I tried others, but this specific song calmed me down. And then I knew that once I got working, ultimately the anxiety would pass and my hands would settle down. But I couldn't walk into the operatory like that for day after day after day after day. So you go through this process, label it, it's anxiety, it's depression, it's fear, it's anger, it's frustration, it's a joy, whatever. And then you could get it off your back and beside you and start to put some space in between you by saying things like, I know it always passes. I know it always passes. I'm going to go listen to my song. I'm going to do some affirmation. I went to therapy over it, So the funniest story was my therapist was a patient of mine before he was my therapist. I can't believe I'm telling you this. And so I'm in therapy with him one day, cognitive behavioral therapy. He's helping me work through these things. And he needed 2 crowns on 8 and 9. And he said, oh, yeah, as I was leaving his office, he's like, yeah, I need to schedule those crowns. And I said, Doc, you're going to let me work on your mouth? And he said, are you kidding? Who better to work on my mouth than you? He goes, I know exactly who you are. He says, I know exactly how to handle you. I'm like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But we did his 2 crowns, So, yeah, I mean, you just start to work through it. You give yourself some tools and resources. It's nothing, just like a telephone. It's just like a computer. You just need tools and resources that will help you get through it. And so that's what I would tell these people when they're starting to feel like, oh, my God, people are going to think I'm better than them. Well, the first thing I would say was, I wonder if you can reframe that into a statement that's exactly the opposite of what you just said to me. So what you said to me was, people are going to think I'm better than you. Well, the complete opposite would be, I wonder if people will think that I'm less better or worse than them because I don't take insurance. Is there any possibility that that statement is true? And the answer is always yes. I mean, because there's no right and wrong. There's no 100%. So if both polar statements have a certain amount of possibility of being correct, then why would you get attached to either one of them? Just give it up, So we don't have to deal with that anymore. And when we do have to deal with it, then you label it. Oh yeah, I'm feeling that ego thing where people are going to come in and say, because you don't take insurance, oh, you think you're better than me. Well, some of the people are going to think, well, I don't want to go to you because you don't take my insurance. You're worse than me. There you go. Problem solved.
Okay.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah. So I know it's just funny, man. I'm thinking of when you think you're better than me, you think you're better than me, and there was
you think you're better than me.
You think you're better than me. So, it's an Italian thing, right? You think you're better than me. So okay. So here we are. We're thinking of, okay, I want to go to fee for service. I want to change to that model. I want my practice to look like that. We already talked about, you kind of have put yourself into frame of mind and also picture what that looks like. Put yourself there, right? start with the end in mind, what have you. And now you start identifying those feelings. Then you start to name or label and then separate, get some distance so you can have some more clarity and or some more ability to keep them where they belong, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, you keep them at arm's length.
At arm's length is a better place. Yeah. So now,
well, so let's
say some of the other things we're going to be looking.
Yeah. So the next thing that you're going to go through, I would bet, would be, okay, well, it's change, right? I mean, now we're talking about just change.
Everybody's averse to change initially, but go ahead. Yep.
Well, that's what people think, but I mean, do you diet? Do you cut your hair? Do you read a book? Do you try to learn something? I mean, we're changing every day. So people don't hate change. They hate the way we try to change them for the most part. One of my favorite stories, and this happens almost in every DSO that I've seen, they do all their due diligence, they buy an office, and then the office manager, after being told how valuable they are and how you're absolutely vital, they walk in and quit. And you know, why are you quitting? You say, well, I hate change. Well, you're going to go change your office, your location, right. Your team.
Well, it's just like a patient that's going to leave your office because the new doctor's coming in. Well, we're going to change. Well, you're going to change anyway, you know?
I mean, you're going to change, right? So they don't hate change. They hate the way we try to change them. So what we do is we have to change our relationship with change. So how do we do that? Well, you're about to change your environment and you're going to go fee for service. So one of the things I would ask people to do is anticipate the change before it happens. So sit down and just start writing out, what are the things that could happen to me now that I'm thinking about getting off of these insurances? What are the possibilities of change? You're never going to get to all of them, right? But invariably, you're going to write down 5 or 6 things, and then one of those things is going to come to pass, right? It's going to come to fruition. And you can go to that page and go, dang, I'm good. I already knew or anticipated that this was going to happen. And here are the 3 things that I wrote down. If this happens, then I'll do this. So now we just go, well, I'll just do these 3 things. You know, it's nothing more than managing the expectations of a patient, because now you're managing your own expectations. So anticipating that there will be change is the first part of managing the change. Don't get caught blindsided by the whole thing, right? I'm not saying that you should go quit your job so that you'll know what it feels like to get fired. You know, I'm not saying that.
Right. But
example, you know, like you said, before,
cancer
to be a survivor, right? But just sit down and anticipate. Look, clearly you're not the first person to ever get off insurance policies, right? So I'm betting you can find somebody to help you create that list. Hey, what happened to you? What were the changes that happened to you in your practice when you got off of insurance plans? I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They're going to tell you exactly the 5 or 6 things that happened. Dude, how did you handle those things? I don't know. I just did. Okay, well, thanks. I got to go to the next guy and ask him, here's the list of 6 things. How did you handle these things? You know?
Right.
And I mean, you're going to fill out the sheet ultimately yourself. And then you're going to sit back and just kind of go, yep, that's happening. Do 1, do 2, do 3. Yep, that's happening. Do 1, do 2, do 3. Don't get caught with your pants down, you know?
So it's the old Bobby Knight, right? Either plan to fail or fail. If you fail to plan, you're going to plan to fail.
That's right.
So you kind of have to almost go through the, what do you call that tree, right?
The decision tree, yeah.
Decision tree, right?
Yeah.
And have all your bases covered, as well as a number of alternative pathways, right?
Now, I did have one client. He's the only person that I've met so far that enjoyed chaos. He truly did. He had multiple locations in Chicago, and he ran his downtown Chicago practice as if it was a hospital. There were no appointments. It was walk-ins only, and he would triage and treat. Now, his associates, it drove them crazy because they got all got out of dental school thinking I'm going to have this schedule and I'm going to know what I'm doing the day before. He hated that, you know. But he's the only person I've ever come across that liked practicing in just an outright chaotic environment.
But was that the only practice? Yeah.
No, he had 2 or 3 in Chicago.
So he probably
But that was the only practice that was run like that, because that was
he
the only
probably
practice
loved
that he practiced.
he probably loved the variety. Hey, listen, Tuesday is free for all day, right?
Right. Right.
And there's a doc in Philadelphia, that Lee Schiffman, and that's his model. He's open 7 days a week and has no appointments, and it's pretty much walk-in, emergency only, full fee for service. They pay cash, and it's
That's right.
neat model.
Right.
It's a really neat model, and it's so unique.
But you really have to be a great general dentist.
Well, you have to have a pretty good skill set for darn sure.
Yeah,
right? You got to be.
You can't be referring things out. You know, I mean,
yeah, you got to be able to diagnose and treat. You're not.
Yeah, you got to be able to diagnose and treat. You got to be fast. And
yeah, you're not a traffic cop. You are a judge, jury, and executioner. Really.
That's right. That's right. You're doing it all. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. It was a good interview. It was a great conversation.
I'll bet.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up in a bit. Do you have more you want to cover?
Well, I think again that I would stress to people that change is important in our lives and that we shouldn't shy away from it. We should almost embrace it. And if you can make that part of your culture, even, then your employees, if they're not averse to change, what a better environment, right? Because they're not taken off guard either.
I should read to you my core values, because one of them,
change.
Be adaptable to change. Yep.
Love it.
Be ready to change whatever it is. We're going to change. You got to be on the boat. Yeah,
that's dentistry. I mean, that's life, really. But dentistry. I used to kind of tell myself every day when I'd walk in the office, okay, I'm going to expect 6 things that are going to try to throw me off base, and 6 hiccups. And if I got out of the office and I really counted only 5, then I was like, that's a pretty cool day, right? If I had 7, well, I didn't have 7. I only had 1, really.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah.
So that was a good way to walk alongside of it, to kind of give it a name and not wear it when I got home. Oh, I had 7 hiccups today. It's like, 1 more than I expected.
So if folks want to reach you, right, they can reach you at bluehorsepersonaldevelopment.com.
Yeah. bluehorsepersonaldevelopment.com, bluehorsepd.com gets you there as well. And we've got just I just think some great products and programs. We have an online leadership training program that's 12 weeks completely online for people that kind of like to do it yourself type of thing. Really a lot of great content. I've just, again, like dentistry, I've had some great mentors in the leadership field as well. And we talked about John Maxwell, and there's some other guys, Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle, just really, really great guys. Simon Sinek, I listen to.
Simon's he's got some good books. Interesting.
Simon's good. Yeah.
An interesting guy.
Yeah.
So last question I got to ask you.
Sure.
Nothing to do with dentistry. If you are going to go back in time, where would you go? Why? With who? What? Give us some details. You're free to go anywhere.
Can I go back to 1965 or 1968 where I'm 8 years old again?
You can go back to pyramids. I don't care.
Oh, dude. No. That's a no-brainer for me. I mean, I want to be 8 years old again. I want to be on a sailboat with my mom and dad. And, I lost my mom when I was 25 and I haven't seen my dad since 2009. So I had such a great childhood. I would, in a New York minute, as you guys say, I would go back and relive those years between 8 and 18 all over again. A lot of people say they'd like to go back to college. I mean, those were certainly fun days, but no, dude, I want to smell my mother and hug her again for sure.
Yeah. You can't top that, man. You cannot top that. I had an inkling. I didn't know exactly. It's always fun because you
tried to get me to cry on the spot.
No, I just want your visceral response, like your first, what comes in your head. I don't care how wacky it is. I'm glad you didn't prepare for it. People have listened to the podcast, they kind of get ready, but it's really right. It's stripped down. It's who you are. It's your DNA. And
no, I've always wanted to be a cowboy, but to smell the cookies in the oven.
Yeah. But it echoes what you talked about with your childhood. I mean, it echoes what you said in the very beginning of this podcast. You had a great childhood. You had a great life. Your mom, influential, stay at home. You had a nurturing. idealistic, really. You said Ozzie and Harriet, I think, were the words you used.
Leave It to Beaver, but yeah, same thing.
Oh, Leave It to Beaver. I'm sorry, that's one.
Yeah.
I didn't see either of them, but I've seen a couple reruns of it. But
I still watch Leave It to Beaver. So good.
All right. Well, Charles, I appreciate you. That was really great talking to you. I know you're going to some folks, and interesting conversation. I've heard it talked about in different ways. I do like a lot of the techniques and phrasing and descriptions of things. It's vivid and it's real. And the imagery, if you're a big, like a photo learner, you can make a storybook here and really capture, green eggs and ham type of reader.
Well, not only do we know that dentistry throughout its history has had a problem with suicide rates and divorce rates and depression and all that. Now we're in an area where we're allowed to talk about it too, which is great, right? So if that's the case, hey, let's talk about it and let's get you some skills, just like you have dental skills. It's exactly the same thing. Once you have the skills, you know how to handle these things. You can do your dentistry and make money and be a great clinician, and then you can go home and not carry this stuff with you. Empower others to take stuff off your plate. It's great life.
All right, man. Great stuff. Great way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee-for-service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee-for-Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.